In a small coastal town, tucked between the cliffs and the sea, there stood an old library that few people remembered visiting but everyone somehow knew existed. It wasn't grand, nor famous, it had no marble floors or golden domes. Its wooden sign simply read, "The Harlow Public Library, for those who still believe in stories." The windows were always a little foggy, as if the building was still waking up from a dream. Inside, the air carried the scent of paper, ink, and rain. There was only one librarian, Elias Harlow, a quiet man whose hair had gone silver early and whose eyes looked as though they had seen both too much and not enough. People said he had been the librarian there forever. No one remembered when he started working. Some whispered that he had built the library himself. Others joked that he came with it, like the shelves and the dust and the silence that hummed when no one spoke. But there was something odd about that library, something no one could ever quite explain. The shelves stretched farther than the building should have allowed. The aisles seemed to shift when you weren't looking, like corridors in a dream. And sometimes, on rare, hushed afternoons when the sea was calm and the clock forgot to tick, you might find a book that shouldn't exist at all. One misty morning, a young woman named Mara stepped into the library for the first time. She had moved to the town only a month ago, seeking quiet after her world had come apart, her fiancé gone, her job lost, her heart like a drawer left open in a storm. She came in only to escape the rain. But the moment she crossed the threshold, she felt something shift inside her, like the faint tug of a memory she couldn't place. The librarian looked up from his desk, his glasses perched low on his nose. "You found us," he said softly. "I was just passing by," Mara replied. "It looked warm." "It usually is," Elias said, with a small smile. "Every visitor warms it a little more." He gestured toward the endless rows of shelves. "Take your time. The book you need always finds you." Mara laughed awkwardly, thinking it was a kind of poetic greeting. But something about his tone made her pause. She wandered between aisles that smelled of old cedar and salt. The rain drummed lightly against the windows. Her fingers drifted along the spines until one book caught her attention. It was a simple blue hardcover, no title, no author, no publisher's mark. She opened it. Inside, she found her own name on the first page. For Mara, who came here when she thought she had nowhere left to go. Her breath caught. The pages were filled with handwriting, not printed words, but neat, steady penmanship that looked eerily familiar. She turned a few pages and froze. It was her story, her memories, her heartbreak, her move to this town. Even the sentence she had spoken to Elias moments ago, "It looked warm." She looked up, the world suddenly too still. "Excuse me," she called. "Mr. Harlow?" He appeared at the end of the aisle, as if he'd been standing there all along. "You found one of the new ones," he said, his voice almost kind. "What is this?" Mara asked, her hands trembling. How does this exist?" Elias sighed and adjusted his glasses. "They come to me before their time. Books that haven't been written yet. Lives that haven't finished telling themselves." Mara stared at him, waiting for an explanation that made sense. Elias walked to a nearby shelf, his fingertips brushing gently against the spines as though greeting old friends. "Every story," he said, "has a heartbeat that begins long before it's told. Sometimes that heartbeat echoes loud enough to be heard in the present." He looked at her kindly. "You're standing in a library that listens. These books, they're possibilities. Futures that haven't been chosen yet." Mara shook her head. "That's impossible." "Most truths are," he replied. He took the book from her hands and opened it to a page near the middle. "Read this," he said. The words were hers, but not from the past. They were from days that hadn't yet come. A job offer. A letter from her estranged mother. A stranger she'd meet in the market. A night she'd laugh again without guilt. She stared at the ink, her heart pounding. "This hasn't happened." Not yet, Elias said. But it might. The future isn't fixed, it only waits for you to write it. Over the weeks that followed, Mara kept returning to the library. Each time, she found new books, some that whispered her name, some that seemed to hum faintly as she passed. She noticed that Elias never seemed to check the time. The clocks in the library didn't tick. There was no calendar on the wall. The world outside moved on, but inside the library, it always felt like twilight. One evening, she asked him, "How long have you been here?" Elias smiled wistfully. "Long enough to understand that time isn't as straight as we think." Mara studied his face. "Are these books about you too?" He hesitated before answering. "Once, yes. I used to shelve them. Until I found the last one." "The last one?" He nodded. "It told me my story would end when I stopped believing I could change it." She swallowed. "And did it?" His eyes softened. "Not yet." Winter came, and with it, long evenings wrapped in silence. Mara had begun writing again, something she hadn't done since she was a child. Short stories, small fragments of her thoughts, the way the sea looked at dusk. One night, she arrived at the library to find a new book waiting on the desk. Her name was written on the cover this time, in gold. When she opened it, the pages were blank except for one line. "Every unwritten story is a second chance." Elias watched her from across the room. "Some stories don't need to be read," he said quietly. "They need to be lived." She realized then that the books were never about predicting the future, they were about reminding people that one still exists. Mara looked around the vast library, the endless shelves of lives yet unlived, dreams yet dreamed. "What happens to the others?" she asked. "The ones who never come for their stories." Elias looked up toward the high ceiling where dust motes drifted like tiny constellations. "They wait," he said. "Every story waits to be found." Years passed. The townspeople still spoke of the library, though few could find it anymore. It appeared only when it was needed, like a door in a dream. Some said they'd once met a young woman who ran it now, with gentle eyes and a voice that carried both the hush of the sea and the wisdom of time. They said she always greeted visitors with the same words. "Take your time. The book you need always finds you." No one knew what happened to Elias Harlow. Some believed he'd gone into the shelves one night and simply kept walking, becoming a story himself, folded neatly between the pages of eternity. But if you were to step into that quiet library on a rainy afternoon, and listen carefully, you might hear the faint sound of a page turning in the next aisle, slow and deliberate, like a heartbeat that has no end. And somewhere between those shelves lies a book with your name on it, still waiting. For the day you believe in second chances. And the courage it takes to write the next line. The librarian who shelved books that weren't yet written, a soft breeze tale about how the future is not found, but created, one quiet page at a time.